Absolute sickos like Danny and I have been doing rookie drafts all spring, but a lot of you guys haven't done your rookie drafts yet. If you guys are just coming back to the scene, we're going to break down our top 36 Dynasty rookie rankings. There's been some changes since the last time we did this, which was shortly after the NFL draft. And of course, all of our updated Dynasty rankings and all that kind of stuff is available on Flock Fantasy. But Danny, let's get right into it. 101 has not changed. That was Ashton Jeanty before. It is Ashton Jeanty still. We know what the case is. Basically, he's 6th overall pick, going to get the volume. The Raiders are an improved offense with Geno Smith coming in, with Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll coming in. Pretty straightforward. The only thing that we could really talk about here is, are you willing to trade up for Ashton Jeanty from other picks, or where does he rank among other Dynasty running backs? I mean, he's my RB3 in Dynasty. He's a guy that I traded up for a lot of my rookie drafts when I was looking for that hammer running back to bring me into a contending window.
Yeah, and I think he represents that. The market actually represents that he should be that 12.5 ADP over on Underdog as the RB5 off the board. It's pretty clear that the market this year expects Ashton Jeanty to be a workhorse running back from day one. They obviously make those offensive improvements, fortify the offensive line a little bit. Obviously, you hire a new coaching staff, Pete Carroll coming over, Chip Kelly from the national champ, Ohio State Buckeyes. The offensive projection looks good. You add in a quarterback that you believe in. Maybe we do see the passing offense as a whole do uptick. And Ashton Jeanty, people might be saying, well, if the passing offense upticks, like, wouldn't that hurt the running back? It's like, well, no, like Ashton Jeanty, if you just look at his profile from 2024, people might say, well, he's a zero in the passing game this year. It's like, dude, he was getting so many carries to the point where he couldn't be used in the passing game. If we saw what he did at Boise State in 2023, you'll see, in addition to being one of the best pure running prospects we've seen in a while, he's a very good receiver out of the backfield, and he has the opportunity to be a top 3 level target on this team right from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys are in a rookie draft picking 101, whether you're a contender, rebuilder, whatever, you pick Ashton Jeanty, and especially contending teams that may be lucked into a top 3 to 5 pick, going up and getting aggressive for Ashton Jeanty is something we would highly recommend, because it's something I definitely did in a couple of my contending teams where I had like somebody else's first that was like 103, 104. I was like, hey, how much on top of this is it going to cost me to go get Ashton Jeanty, get a hammer into my lineup? So let's go down to the 102, 103. Tier. We did have Travis Hunter kind of almost in a tier of his own, or even in that tier with Jeanty at the 102. For me, I've balanced out my opinion to the point that, depending on scoring format, if you're in a half PPR, if you needed a running back a lot more, I would say back in April, I said, hey, 99% of the time I'm taking Travis Hunter over Amari and Hampton. You don't draft for need in rookie drafts. But I've kind of softened up to the point that now, after this Najee Harris stuff, after the fact that Amari and Hampton is basically a top 12, 13 running back for most people from like a redraft angle, in addition to being a top 5 Dynasty running back asset on the market, I'm actually okay pressing the button on Amari and Hampton about 30% of the time, given team need, situation, scoring formats that maybe favor running backs or whatever the case is.
Context doesn't matter. If you're in a heavy, point per carry, point per running back, first down type of league, obviously we've seen some multipliers be assorted to the running back position because so many people devalue them. I would say between 2022, 2023, 2024 startups, that we are seeing people use those type of manipulations in the league now. Most of the time, I'm just going to still be taking Travis Hunter. The issue, of course, does he play 75+% of snaps week one? Is it more so like he plays 54% and maybe comes up with the big play? It's like, to me, I think if you needed the running back production, I wouldn't fault you for it. I just personally won't be able to take Amari and Hampton over Travis Hunter, because I do still see the scenario. Yeah, there is the scenario he plays 53% of the snaps week one. He gets 4 targets in that as a result. But there's also the scenario, hey, he's a 70+% snap share right off the get-go, and he's one of the most talented players in the league. Like, that's why I can't pass on Hunter.
Yeah, I think most of the people listening to this too are probably in more casual Dynasty leagues if they're only drafting now. And that's also kind of why I think Hampton will hold a little bit more market value. There's a little bit less uncertainty. He's now flipped Travis Hunter and ADP on redraft formats like Underdog. Before, earlier in the offseason when sickos were drafting, I think they were going about the same range. Now Amari and Hampton, since this Najee stuff, and Hunter, since some of the reports came out kind of, anti his offensive snap share, we've seen them flip a little bit from a redraft angle. So I do think in those formats, it does kind of make sense that Hampton would have the better market value. And of course, if you needed a running back, like I said, it does make a little bit more sense. But both of these guys are just absolutely phenomenal assets to have regardless.
Yeah, like the difference here is I would have Travis Hunter 2-3 turn at 22nd overall. I have Amari and Hampton more so as an early 3rd round pick at 25th overall. So that's the difference there. Again, I wouldn't take Omar over him, but they're close enough in the rankings to the point where need could dictate. If you have, let's just say, your wide receivers on your team, I don't know, you have Puka Nacua, you have Amon St. Brown.
And you already
have
have
Brian Thomas
BTJ
Jr.,
too.
BTJ, and maybe your only running back on your roster worth a damn is like Bucky Irving, and you have nothing else. It's like maybe in that scenario, I would do my due diligence. I would try to trade down to the 103. Also, like you said, with the market actually preferring Amari and Hampton, like it would have been easier in principle to do that in, sharper leagues, teams drafting, April, May. But now that the casuals are coming around, they're going to look at the touch workload of Amari and Hampton. And I don't think it's going to be plausible for you to be able to trade down a pick as maybe you could have 2 months ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The one thing we do agree on here, though, is that the 104, it is very clearly definitely Tet McMillan. And also, there's maybe somebody that would take Trevion Henderson, Cam Ward if they needed a quarterback. I doubt you'd get Egbuka going over Tet McMillan in most formats. But I do think, given the prospect caliber that Tet McMillan was, he was borderline a league winner prospect, right at the top of the wide receiver one upside bucket, with Drake London, Romo Dunze as his best comparable type of dudes. Goes to a situation now where, like Amari and Hampton and Travis Hunter, he's like a mid-round pick in redraft leagues, 4th, 5th round pick on most platforms. And you got a guy projecting for 120, 130, 140 plus targets his rookie season. And at 104, when you're looking to build out the way that we like to build dynasty teams, a stable of stud young wide receivers, Tet McMillan as my wide receiver 13 in my dynasty rankings is a very stable asset. And as we talked about during April and earlier in the dynasty offseason, we are trying to get into this top 4. When we pick 108, 109, we're trying to get up and secure one of these assets, whether it's Hunter sliding, whether it's Hampton if you need a running back, or whether it's just McMillan at 104.
Because as you guys will see, once we get deeper in this class, the depth in this class just doesn't really materialize like some years. Like realistically, there's profiles that you have to take in this year's class in that mid-second area, early third round area that would have been available down the board in past years. So I do think this year specifically, once you hit the 203 on, or the end, sorry, is the 203. Once you hit the 204 on, we do see a little bit of a change up into the fact that I would rather just consolidate. Maybe I spend my 207 plus my 303 to move up to the 201. I would rather do this in this specific class. Let's have this conversation though. Like you said, obviously these top 4 significantly ahead of the pack based on our rankings. We've had this discussion in a couple of live streams because there might be a sentiment in some leagues. Tet McMillan, Travis Hunter, the top 2 wide receivers off the board, top 10 draft capital. Obviously, if somebody's just literalist and looking at the ADPs, they will see that on Underdog right now, Tet actually does go above Travis Hunter. However, I think we both agree that even though the median projection for Tet McMillan might be comparable or higher than Travis Hunter's this year, based on the top 20th, top 10 percentile for Travis Hunter versus Tet McMillan, that's why there's a gap between them for us.
Yeah, I mean, most NFL draft analysts agreed that Travis Hunter was the better receiver prospect. Even if you take out the defense stuff, like he was the better receiver prospect. Tet McMillan, guys like Steve Smith and Matt Harmon did have some concerns about how he would be used at the next level and some of his translatability as a separator and stuff. So there is a difference in prospect caliber when you just factor in the tape, even though they're both wide receiver one upside prospects in the prospect model. We have to contextualize that Travis Hunter was playing defense in college, and his prospect profile would have been a lot better if he was playing offense 100% of the time, all 3 years of his college career. So yeah, I do have Travis Hunter higher in terms of my overall startup wide receiver rankings, also a slight mini tier ahead in terms of rookie drafts, but I do kind of understand why a more risk averse drafter would maybe favor Tet McMillan, given the fact that him and Hunter are going similarly in redraft formats, and you have a little bit better of a projectable, let's say weeks 1 to 10 of their rookie seasons.
Yeah, no, I think it's reasonable. It's just the talent difference alone makes up the gap for me. Like if somebody said specifically, hey, I prefer Tet McMillan to Travis Hunter in redraft, like the market would agree with you. It's just the fact that I think Travis Hunter, if he does get the snaps, can legitimately be a league winner. That is the difference there. But we love Tet McMillan. He's the 104 top 10 level pick. If he develops into a Drake London type of asset, I think everybody's going to be happy regardless. We get on to this next tier, and that's going to be the 105 to the 107 we have listed here. Trevion Henderson, Cam Ward, Emeka Egbuka. I think all of them kind of represent, a good stop in each of their respective positions. Trevion Henderson appeal to be a top 6 to 8 dynasty running back from day one. Cam Ward, maybe he isn't in that top 12 range, but a pretty clear mid-tier quarterback too, I would say. And then Emeka Egbuka, he is the most interesting right here because depending on the status of Chris Godwin, is he going to be fully healthy by week 1? Is he going to be fully healthy by week 4? Is it more so going to be, hey, maybe the first 7 weeks he doesn't look like himself, and by week 8 we see Godwin again? That is the biggest question mark for me right now, because if you guarantee me that we even see 4 weeks off the rip with Emeka Egbuka as the wide receiver 2 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I legitimately think he could put up top 20 level numbers in that stretch.
Yeah, and if he does that, I mean, you look at a rookie receiver doing something of that caliber, he's going to really, really rise up the wide receiver rankings to the point that by week 5, week 6, he might legitimately be a top 12 to 15 dynasty wide receiver. So he's actually the new addition. Since we did this back in April, we actually had Emeka Egbuka at 107, still where he's being ranked, but we had him and Quinshon Judkins in a tier at 107, 108. But now with the Judkins news and Egbuka getting this positive buzz, Godwin getting some negative buzz, and Henderson and Ward, I would say, haven't really changed in terms of what we think about them now versus what we thought about them at the end of April. It was very clear. Henderson, Ramondre is going to be a little bit of a pest at the beginning of the season, but by the end of the season, we should see a clear, nice workload in the PPR game for him. And then Cam Ward, like you said, kind of a mid QB2 with upside, given the supporting cast around him is not excellent, but it's not bad. We kind of know what to expect. First overall pick quarterback would really rise in value if he does end up hitting from a real life NFL standpoint. But yeah, the big addition to this tier is that Egbuka's situation has gotten a little bit less murky. And also everything that they've said about him, as a Bucs fan, I've been following this very closely, has been like, he is young Chris Godwin. He is as good as Godwin was as a rookie, and we expect him to really take over a huge share here. And with Godwin coming into the season, the data, according to a lot of fantasy docs, projects that about week 6 to 8, he'll be 100%. I tend to think that Godwin will be out there week 1, but not at 100%.
Yeah, and even still, you're looking at what could be a very much more concentrated target situation than last year. Obviously, last year with the Godwin injury, with Evans, dealing with his hamstring, obviously, with it was a hamstring, I believe, last year. Right?
Yeah, it was a hamstring pull. He missed a couple games with.
And then on top of that, obviously, we saw Bucky Irving get banged up at times. Like, you guys kind of just said, hey, whoever's on the field, like, you will get design looks. Like, we saw Jayden McMillan have big games. Cade Otton had a stretch where it felt like he had like 5 straight weeks of 7 or 8 plus targets, if I'm not mistaken, last year. So
he was like a top 10 tight end in my weekly rankings for like week 6 to 12 or whatever.
Like, it kind of showed last year with Liam Cohen. Obviously, like, he's a factor, he leaves, but you guys will feed the ball to whoever's on the field. But you look like you wanted to change that this offseason. There's a reason why you drafted Egbuka at 19. Hell, Jayden McMillan had a good rookie year, but guess what? If you add Egbuka to this team, it's very clear in the order that it's going to be Evans, it's going to be Godwin, it's going to be Egbuka getting the majority of the looks.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then again, long-term is why we like Egbuka. Year 1 was not supposed to be good. And now it's looking like it might be a little bit better. And that might make guys expendable. I've talked about how I think it could be Mike Evans last year. Chris Godwin signed a short-term deal. And especially if he doesn't have a good season this year, that projects well for how Emeka Egbuka would rise up the dynasty market, to the point that if Evans is gone and it's Godwin, Egbuka, and Jayden McMillan, we might view Emeka Egbuka from a redraft standpoint next year and also a dynasty standpoint as the number 1 going forward. It's very possible by the end of his rookie season, he is actually viewed as the number 1 if Mike Evans hangs it up or falls off or gets injured or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and like you said, with these other 2, Trevion Henderson, it could be a Ramondre Stevenson pest, but also we trust the offense and we trust the 3-down ability that he has. We've already heard reports out of training camp, out of the Patriots camp in general, that they do liken that James White type of role to a guy like Trevion Henderson. And I do think from a skill set perspective, he would absolutely crush in that role. And Cam Ward, first overall pick, I would say he's a little bit more volatile than these other 2, because we can make the excuses with the target competition for Egbuka. We can make the excuses in terms of Ramondre Stevenson for Trevion Henderson. We can't make excuses. Like, if Cam Ward comes out of the gate and looks complete and utter ass, he will get like a Zach Wilson tag. He will get like the Trey Lance tag. He'll get like the negative stigma on him. But on the same time, the reason why he's volatile is because if he goes out there and crushes, I mean, we've seen the Joe Burrows, the Justin Herberts, these rookie quarterbacks, if they show signs of life right away, they will skyrocket.
Yeah, he could be a top 10 startup pick at the end of his rookie season if he has a great year. And that's not possible for him. Like, Emeka Egbuka would have to have 1,700 yards his rookie season to be a top 10 startup pick. And Trevion Henderson would have to become the RB1 in Dynasty to become a top 10 startup pick, most likely. So, we can move on from this tier again. Also a good range to trade into for what it's worth. If you're like picking 111, 112, 201, 202, like you said, this class, is the 209 going to be consequential? Is the 301 going to be consequential? Not necessarily. Let's say you had the 202, 209, 301, and you wanted to trade all of them to get up into this 105 to 107 range. Absolutely makes a ton of sense there, given that you got a top 24 dynasty wide receiver sitting there, a top 20 dynasty quarterback, and a top 6 to 10 dynasty running back sitting there. So 108 to 111 is a little bit more changes, like we talked about. With the Quinshon Judkins situation, we did move him down from when he was our 108 down to our 110. And the change that took place was the 2 tight ends going ahead of him. Because as we've seen, I didn't know after the draft how the dynasty market was going to react necessarily to Warren going in the top 15, Loveland going in the top 10, in relation to the dynasty tight end market, because I was like, okay, well, like people don't really like tight ends. Are they going to value these guys over like Laporta? Are they going to value him over Hawkinson? Are they going to value him over Kittle and these type of guys? And we've seen consistently that these are top 5 tight ends off the board, routinely off the board, really in the top 50 to 60 picks in tight end premium startups.
Yeah, and to be honest, obviously this is based on the consensus, but if it was completely up to me, I would actually have the tight ends in a tier with Egbuka, because I have them really close in my rankings right now. I have Egbuka as, if you minus the rookie picks, 54th overall. I actually have Loveland at 55 overall. So like they're back to back for me. Realistically, like you said, they're already profiling as top 5 dynasty tight ends. I actually have them as my dynasty tight end 3 and 4 respectively, with Colson, Loveland, and then Tyler Warren, because the redraft market's already treating them as such. The redraft market's already treating them as top 12 level tight ends in a market that the separation between 4 and 12 is negligible. So if I think the tight end separation between 4 and 12 is negligible, I'd rather take my upside shots on these young tight ends, because if they do develop and they do end up being, maybe instead of Bowers and McBride, the tier now extends because Loveland had a big year, Warren ends up being a top 2 target on the Colts, and now all of a sudden they're going in the 4th or 5th round of redraft leagues next year. I want to take them now because I feel like this is the cheapest these tight ends will be in the next 5 years.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the bull case. I would say the devil's advocate, because I agree with you, but the devil's advocate would be that because Tyler Warren has it all in front of him and he's going to start for the Colts, that if he isn't good, the market could sour on him quicker. And whereas Loveland, maybe this is why you have him ranked over Warren. I actually do prefer Warren to Loveland because I love the projection in the short term for Warren. The market would probably be more understanding if Loveland doesn't have a good year, as opposed to Warren. If he doesn't have a good year, people will be like, is this guy even good? Loveland maybe was the better prospect for some as well. So I do think it's possible that Loveland has a little bit of a longer leash to develop. But as we talked about in the draft cycle, Warren's the pro-ready one. Loveland's maybe the higher ceiling, the higher upside guy, but it's a little bit more raw.
Well, I mean, the difference and the reason why expectations are like that is because people can reasonably say, oh, you know what? He was slow at the gates because like Cole Kmet's been a productive tight end before. If Tyler Warren's losing snaps to Mo Alley Cox, that's an issue.
Oh, yeah. I don't even think that's even in the range of outcomes.
I agree.
I'm just saying. Would just be that like maybe Tyler Warren's like the lowest graded tight end on PFF and has been terrible and dropping the ball and stuff. That would be where his market value just really craters.
Maybe, but even like prior to him developing the league, he's still better than 95% of tight ends.
Yeah, no, exactly. He was still a top 15 pick, and the Colts, by all accounts, are going to use him in a versatile manner too. So he might be running the ball a little bit, maybe even throwing the ball a little bit. Like we saw at Penn State, that's how they used him. He was everywhere.
Let me ask you, obviously, like we could talk about it in the frame of the 2.0. It's just hard because in the 2.0, you can literally argue these guys should be like 104 and 105 off the board. I mean, evidenced by the fact that in our Devi startup, these guys went off the board, I believe, 3-4 turn, if I'm not mistaken.
I would take, in a 2.0 tight end premium, I would take these guys over Cam Warden and Mecca Egbuka and sleep like a baby.
But that's what I mean. Like Tet McMillan would be the combo.
And Henderson and McMillan for sure.
Like, that's what I mean. Like, them versus Tet in a 2.0 would be the conversation. For the purposes of that, we'll just say normal leagues, a lot of you guys play like 1.5, 1.7 even is like the halfway, of course, between 2.0 and 1.5. So I'll just take it from a 1.5 frame right now. If you do have that slight premium and you needed a tight end, where is the highest you can go? Can you get them close to Egbuka, close to Cam Ward? Like, where are you at with these tight ends? Because actually, by my rankings, like I said, they're closer to those guys.
Yeah, I'm like, if you want to just go like this,
I was more so just posing the question. Like, I'm curious where you're at on it.
I can make the argument that in tight end premium formats, this is actually correct. Like the tight ends are in this tier, and in heavy tight end premiums, especially even 1.5 tight end premiums, I think you can make the argument that you could take them over Emeka Egbuka in a rookie draft. I just personally would prefer Emeka Egbuka in most formats because I don't really play in too many tight end premiums that are that heavy, and wide receivers, even in some of those tight end premium formats, are like 3 wide receiver, 2 flex type of leagues for us, full PPR. So wide receivers also going to be highly valuable in those type of formats.
Like graphically, we have it ranked right now on the basis of like if you're in a 0.25 premium or a non-tight end premium. But if you're in a 1.5, that's when like maybe I would say they're in the same tier. But either way, good discussion. Quinshon Judkins and Matthew Golden, the other 2 in this tier. We mentioned the tight ends in depth. Quinshon Judkins, talent-wise, should be in the tier above. Obviously, the legal stuff we're not going to really get into. You guys can speculate in the comments if you want. There's just not something I really want to touch on right now, but it is significant. We could see potentially NFL involvement. We'll see. Does he get 4 games? Does he get 6 games? We'll hear more about it in August, but really not something from a personal level we should touch upon right now until everything from a detail perspective is hashed out. Matthew Golden is the other guy in this tier, simply because I guess it's for us. We've talked so glowingly about Tucker Kraft. We've talked so glowingly about Jayden Reed. It's like I like Matthew Golden a good bit as a prospect, as a fit in this offense. But I also just believe Jayden Reed and Tucker Kraft enough to the point where I don't think year one he's going to smash.
Yeah, and again, to play devil's advocate, well, why did they draft him in the first round if they were excited about those guys? I think realistically, it's probably throw them all up in a hat, and that's the target competition pecking order. Like, it could be Golden's the 1, Reed's the 2, Kraft's the 3. It could be Reed's the 1, Kraft's the 2, and Golden's the 3. Like, it really could go in any which order. And I think the bet that you're making at the 111 or the 112 where you're taking Golden is that he could be the number 1 receiver for Jordan Love on about maybe a 50-50 coin flip or something like that.
Yeah, no, and that's reasonable. And regardless, even if he ends up being the 3rd target, Jordan Love averaged 28 pass attempts per game last year, 34 the year before. And we were talking about, I mean, I mentioned this on the video with Jayden Reed. I mentioned this on the video with Tucker Kraft, but what if we just simply see him get back to the level he was at, where we were saying, like, is this guy going to win MVP in 2024? Is this guy going to have the Packers as a top 3 seed in the conference? Like, those were the discussions we were having. If you don't recall, in that opening game, Friday night game against the Eagles and Packers, people were saying, like, is this the NFC Championship preview? Like, that was the label, that was the narrative that game was given. And I'm not willing to forego that because I trust the coaching staff, I trust Jordan Love, and I think Matthew Golden is a seamless fit. Realistically, I just thought the way the Green Bay offense was structured last year, you didn't have a trustworthy outside wide receiver. Like, Romeo Doubs is a little bit sexless. Obviously, Christian Watson unreliable. Dontavian Wicks, I mean, let's not even get started. If Christian Watson's unreliable, I don't even know what to call Dontavian Wicks.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, the Golden situation and just the Packers pecking order in general is really who do you believe in? And for us, that is kind of, we're playing it through Reed and Kraft, especially given that in a dynasty format, they actually go quite a bit later than Matthew Golden would in a startup. And even in a redraft format, we've been drafting a little bit more Reed and a little bit more Kraft in best ball. I do think we need to maybe talk about what people should be doing with Quinshon. If we don't have to touch on this is what I think will happen. Let me just put it clear. This is how I'm treating Quinshon because this is how I think it will play out. Quinshon is going to start slow in his rookie season because right now he's away from the team, and he'll probably be away from the team for the next little bit. Maybe he doesn't get to training camp until 2-3 weeks down the road from when we're recording this. You guys might have more information as you're watching this, maybe later in August or something like that. Right now, I'm treating Quinshon as if he'll start slow because he's dealing with legal stuff and he gets suspended 6 games next year. That's how I'm treating Quinshon Judkins at the moment, which means that he moves down from my 108 to my 110. And I would say, given the stuff that maybe is on kind of alert for me now as a long-term outlook, I would say he becomes a way more volatile asset than I would have thought of before. So that's how I'm treating Quinshon at the moment. I moved him down. I think he was my RB 9 or 10 in dynasty rankings overall to about my RB 13, give or take. So I've devalued him to the point that he's more of like a late first round caliber asset.
Yeah, I mean, like a Rashee Rice, you got a term for some of these guys.
Yeah, knucklehead. That's the term that I have for these guys. If you're going to be a maniac off the field, it's going to affect your dynasty value because you're probably less likely to become like this great teammate who's going to work his ass off and get better every year. That's why I don't like players like this. And you guys know before the draft, if you were following the channel, I loved me some Quinshon. So this has my radar up for sure.
Welcome to the unction. Yes. I'm joking. We'll go on to the 112 to 204 is the next range we got here.
Yeah. So these guys are not going to be nearly as valuable. And we talked about this back in April. This is kind of where the cutoff was, where these players are starting to become less valuable when you have a pick in the 111 to 204 range. We were actively trying to trade up from those selections because these guys were definitely worse profiles than the ones above them.
So let me ask you, because people might be in the comments, well, you just made the case for Quinshon. His ADP now has declined. He's probably going to be a guy who settles in that 100 to 110 range based off underdog ADP. Well, if that's the case, how do we have him a tier above 2 rookie running backs that are going in the 60s right now? That's what people will comment. So let's just hash that out. There's the difference in terms of the draft capital is the big thing for Judkins versus Kaleb Johnson, top 40 versus, I believe, 93rd overall is where Kaleb went. I technically had these guys in the same talent tier, but I do think the draft capital from a hit rate perspective does matter here. And in terms of RJ Harvey, they're just talking about a different level of prospect. Quinshon Judkins, clear top 3 to 5 running back prospect in this class. RJ Harvey, we more so had in the 11-12 range. I think RJ Harvey can pay off, of course, attachment to the Denver offense, fits what Sean Payton wants from the running back position. I think it could be like a James Cook type of hit, but if Quinshon Judkins does return and maybe the legal issues get pushed to the side, I still think like a Jonathan Taylor level projection could be in store.
Yeah, this is how it comes down to for me, because if somebody is risk averse, you could argue this is how it should be, or even this is how it should be. Like, you could definitely argue that. I wouldn't disagree with somebody who's like, I'm worried about Judkins and I don't want to draft this guy because I don't want him to be the next Darius guy. Very valid concern. Yeah. Kaleb Johnson and RJ Harvey, like you made reference to me, the ultimate ceiling of guys who are not top 35 or top 36 overall draft picks, guys who were not elite athletes coming out. I guess Harvey was, but a worse prospect overall. I'm willing to take the swing on Judkins, which is why I still have him ranked there. But Kaleb Johnson and RJ Harvey, like you said, do project more of like 5th, 6th, 7th round redraft picks, whereas Judkins at the moment is sliding given the fact that he could start slow or whatever. But before that happened, we both very much, or I definitely,
I thought he was one of the best picks on the board.
Yeah, he was one of the best picks on the board in like the 6th round. And I actually had him ranked in the 4th round before this all happened.
Yeah. So hopefully we have more clarity going into the season. That's how we'll be approaching it right now. If you guys disagree or agree in the comments, feel free to let us know how you're approaching it, because somebody might just say, hey, listen, like I would absolutely take Kaleb Johnson over Judkins right now and sleep like a baby. That's fine. I know Arthur might be in the comments. How are you still ranking RJ Harvey below Quinshon Judkins? I think it's fine. If you want to take Harvey, be my guest. It's just this is where we would be willing to take the plunge because we view the talent as being worthy, not to mention the top 40 capital as being the biggest piece. Because as I've talked about in depth multiple times on the channel, even when Judkins was going as the RB25 off the board, running backs of this prospect caliber that go this high in the draft almost always finishes top 25 level running backs as rookies. You look at it in the past, like look at the prospect model, look at the comparable prospects, look at the comparable draft capital. Like you got Nick Chubb, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Kenneth Walker, you got Breece Hall, you got so many examples of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kaleb and RJ Harvey, definitely more so riskier bets at the running back position, given the prospect caliber and the draft capital specifically with Kaleb Johnson. But generally, if you're picking 112, you're picking 201 area and you needed a running back, I think they're definitely fine clicks. You got a good projectable offense with Sean Payton, with Bo Nix there with RJ Harvey. And then, of course, the scheme versatility or the scheme fit that we talked about with Kaleb Johnson going into the zone scheme that Arthur Smith runs. We don't really love the quarterback situation long-term, but generally speaking, I think we all can probably agree that by midpoint, end of rookie season for Kaleb Johnson, he should be the starting running back for the Steelers. And hopefully he has like his floor should be like Brian Robinson and his ceiling should be, somewhere along the lines of like a Rashad White or an Isaiah Pacheco, where you get that RB1 season in year 2 out of a guy like Kaleb Johnson. I would say that's a good kind of adjust your expectations range of outcomes. Some people might say, oh, Kaleb Johnson's ceiling is even higher than those guys, but an RB1 season in year 2 would be an excellent, run out for Kaleb Johnson. Yeah.
And then Luther Burden's the next guy we have here. He has missed a little bit of mini camp with lower body, I believe, like tissue injuries is what it's been described as. Ben Johnson obviously has talked about it in depth that he loves the fit of Burden on the offense, talks about the talent level of him. Like we've heard all these reports this offseason. We just need to see this guy get on the field. If he gets on the field and we're hearing reports like, oh, like Ben Johnson saying like, wow, what a weapon he is in space, or wow, we want to feed him some touches and get him open. Like we will hear some coach speak from Ben Johnson on Luther Burden at some point. And I do think his ADP is going to rise on Underdog. It's just because we haven't heard anything positive yet. And because he was a raw prospect that is missing time, it's like, I've shifted a lot in terms of like initially it was just, Burden over everybody in this offense. I do have Rome Odunze ranked higher above him in Dynasty now because we have, of course, the RP data coming out. He's working extensively with the offense right now, and he was the better comparable prospect. So that is the change I've made, is there's just no possible world I can rank Burden above Odunze because I'm starting to get a lot higher on Odunze.
Yeah, and even like you, someone who's very high on Caleb Williams, I think we can probably all imagine that this is going to be the number 3 target long term. You and I both talked about DJ Moore. We think this is probably his last season in Chicago. Maybe he doesn't even make it through the season. He's dealt at the deadline or even before the season or something like that. I think we can all agree that the pecking order probably is Rome Odunze as the one, and then it's a battle between Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, a battle in which I think Colston Loveland wins as the top 10 pick, as the guy that can be the over the middle target or whatever.
I guess it really depends because like it defined target, because Sam Laporte is probably a higher pecking order target than Jameson Williams, but doesn't mean that he'll have more yards on a per year basis than Jameson Williams. Like I think Colston Loveland can get more targets than Burden, but it might be where Colston Loveland is like an 800, 900 yard tight end and Burden is an 1100 yard receiver. Like that scenario still exists for me because of simply playing a wide receiver position as opposed to the tight end position.
I would say he out targets Burden. That would be how I would define it.
And that's fair. I think it's really reminiscent of like a Detroit situation where none of them profile into like the Amon-Ra, but they're all three in a way combined to the point where if the offense is good enough, they can all pay off.
Yeah, and to me, I think the difference, I guess, there would be that while I don't think Rome is playing the Amon-Ra role necessarily, if Amon-Ra gets 160, 170 targets a year, I think that is absolutely the ceiling for Rome Odunze, is that long-term, he might be 160, 170 target receiver.
Well, that's the bet, right? I believe him. I literally think all three of those guys are like superb talents. Like I had Loveland as my tight end 1, Burden as my wide receiver 3, Odunze as my wide receiver. Like the actual talent acquisition of the Bears has been remarkable in these last 2 years from a skill position perspective, where I very much see a scenario where Rome Odunze is the 170 target alpha number 1 wide receiver. I also see the scenario where Burden's a 1,200 yard, 10 touchdown guy. Like I want talented football players. And if I think all of them have upper percentile range of outcomes where they're at the top of their positions, I'm really just taking my stabs, because realistically, it's not like an even thing. It's like you either miss or lose, or you either miss or you hit. Because if you miss, I'm willing to miss if the hit looks so desirable.
Yeah, you know and as we made reference to, we're not assuming that DJ's there long term. So if you're looking at this going, I don't want to take Burden, there's too many mouths to feed, I think it'll clear up by mid-season or by the end of his rookie year. And that's why we're kind of willing to invest in both Loveland and Burden and put those concerns a little bit aside.
It's a fascinating topic because, like I said, like people look in terms of just valuation in general as, hey, listen, like Devontae Smith, for example, in the 4th round, he's either going to hit or he's going to miss. You know what I mean? People don't really look at like, what's the 20 percentile outcome where he smashes? Like, what's the comparable outcome in terms of this guy potentially smashing versus that guy potentially smashing? That's not weighed upon because people will just see the ADP and either mark a miss or a hit. But there's a big difference between hitting on the wide receiver 20 versus the wide receiver 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jaxson, Dart, and Jayden Higgins are the other guys in this territory. With Dart, you're betting basically that I would say most people assume Russell Wilson will start 8 to 12 games this year, I would imagine. Maybe he starts the whole season, and that's like the floor for Jaxson Dart. And he's more Jordan Love than Michael Penix. My thing is that that's probably about the range of outcomes we're talking, where maybe he gets on the field final 3 to 5 games of the year, looks pretty good, and he's Michael Penix going into his second season, where how we value Michael Penix is that he's like a mid QB2. Some people like him, some people not as high on him, and he's kind of that volatile asset that you can choose to be in on or not. One thing I will say with Jaxson Dart is that if he somehow gets on the field before week 5, I would feel very confident in him really ascending up the ranks, because I don't think Russell Wilson's a bum. I think he's a good enough quarterback to fend off a rookie. And if Jackson's getting a shit ton of buzz during training camp saying he's picking up the offense, he looks like a great quarterback, I mean, suddenly we could have a guy who's producing 300-400 rushing yards, 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, and has like, you know, JJ McCarthy in his range of outcomes, as opposed to like what we think of JJ minus the situation, but as a talent is what we think of Jaxson Dart.
Yeah, I'm not quite there because I was lower on him than you as a prospect. But I mean, the draft capital, obviously indicative top 25 overall. It also comes back to, I've mentioned this to you, but I really just think if the Giants are competitive, they will just keep Russell Wilson in all year, because I just think at this point in their careers, respectively, Russell Wilson is actually a starting caliber quarterback. I don't know that yet of Jaxson Dart. But like you've pointed to, if they start 3-9 and they're
which is what the betting markets would suggest is likely.
Yeah, which again could very well happen. Maybe I'm just a little bit more optimistic because I think their defense actually profiles a lot better than it did last year. For example, their defensive line, their front 7 looks really solid. And on top of that, I do think that Malik Neighbors' natural progression, obviously, Russell Wilson, as opposed to the turnstile of quarterbacks that they had last year between Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. Like, I'm sorry if you're a Giants fan, you had to live through that, by the way.
Yeah, not a great situation. I guess ultimately the reason you select Jaxson Dart is you're picking at the early second
Yeah.
round. You want an asset, especially if you're a rebuilder that can really accumulate a ton of value.
Yeah.
Maybe you are looking specifically for a third quarterback. You already have Kyler Murray and Drake May or something. You're looking for a third QB to tack onto your bench. Jaxson makes a lot of sense in that situation. And he is really one of the last quarterbacks I feel confident in being a long-term QB3 for my roster.
Yeah. And then that's reasonable. Obviously, if you're a contending team, maybe you say, hey, why would I hold the value of Jaxson Dart when I can just transition it into like a Geno Smith type because he can be useful for me in season? But if you're a young team and you got, let's just say half of these rookies on your team and, like 3 2026 firsts and a fucking like, I don't know, 2 2027 firsts, you know what I mean? Like any type of shells, any type of house money shells we've seen in the past. At that point, it's like, okay, just take the young quarterback because you don't need him to produce right away.
Yeah. If you build out a team where it's just long-term focus, Jaxson makes a lot of sense for that. So does Jayden Higgins, for what it's worth. Jayden Higgins right now currently battling with Christian Kirk, with Jalen Noel, who is the third-round pick, to be the number 2 ultimately behind Nico Collins in CJ Stroud's Houston Texans-led offense there. But Jayden Higgins is going to be given the leg up, I would imagine, in training camp because he's the big receiver who can play on the outside, whereas Christian Kirk and Jalen Noel profile more as slot receivers. So while Nico is going to be the alpha there and probably command anywhere between a 27 to 30% target share, I would say Jayden Higgins profiles pretty strongly as a top 35 selected wide receiver, a guy who was fully guaranteed, the first one of such to be fully guaranteed in the second round contracts. They probably feel quite excited about Jayden Higgins. And if you think about what Stephon Diggs was capable of doing alongside Nico Collins last year, there is room for CJ Stroud to support multiple receivers.
Well, that's the thing too. So I've talked about this in reverse with Nico Collins that, maybe having another big-bodied wide receiver that can take X snaps away with Jayden Higgins is going to be good for him. I mean, it also applies to Jayden Higgins. You're not landing in a situation like Keon Coleman last year where, we only have slot players. We only have Dalton Kincaid. We only have Khalil Shakir. We only have, the Curtis Samuel, for example, is on the team. It's like, hey, guess what, Keon? You're 6'4", go play X bully ball. It's like, well, no, they don't have to do that with Jayden Higgins right away because when you have just not even a bully, you're having like the biggest bully in the yard, like Nico Collins. You put him on the outside X wide receiver. Maybe him and AJ Brown are the two best at playing pure X in the league.
Yeah, no, he's definitely up there as one of the best X's in the league. And you're also not going to see any number 1 corners. And Higgins at Iowa State only saw number 1 corners as the X receiver on the outside, the clear number 1 of his team.
Yeah, exactly. Like obviously, Chase, Jefferson, Lamb are going to be better than Collins on like the grand scheme. But like specifically, hey, I got to play somebody at X and I got to draw defensive attention. Like Jayden Higgins, not to mention we've talked about, he could feast in a big slot role if he played 30% of his snaps there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You think about the way that, some of the teams in the division are probably going to play against Nico Collins. If Hunter is playing full-time corner, he's probably going to be going up against Nico Collins. If you have the Tennessee Titans with L'Jarius Sneed, they're probably going to put him on Nico Collins, and you're going to have open space there for Jayden Higgins because most teams don't have 2 lockdown corners, and you're going to be able to use him on the outside. And like you said, in reverse for Nico Collins, it helps him, but it also helps Jayden Higgins a lot too, having a guy like Nico on the field.
Yep, for sure. But I think it's pretty clear why this is that tier, that 112 to 204. We like all these guys' projections. We think all of them are, 1-2 caliber players. Like I kind of alluded to, though, once you get to the 205, it's like I would rather these guys like a half round cheaper based on previous years, which kind of just shows that maybe after the 204, like the lack of depth in this class really shows.
Yeah, if you were the type of person who stacked up a bunch of late second round picks, selling off veterans last year, you kind of got the shit end of the stick here because in years past, the late second round was home to better projections, like you said, then a Bechel Tuten, then a Kyle Williams, then a Cam Scatterbo, then a Trey Harrison, then a Jack Bech, who make up the 205 to 209 territory of this year's class. They might have been 209 to 301 of last year's class kind of thing.
And yeah, starting with Tuten, after he was drafted, we were, on the belief that, hey, maybe this guy can start from week 1. New regime, Liam Cohen coming over. We trust the offense. We trust the, the size profile, the 3-down profile, the speed profile that Bechel Tuten has. And we know that the 2 running backs ahead of him with Travis Etienne, with Tank Bigsby, they weren't drafted by this regime. So we were saying, okay, well, if Tuten starts from week 1, like, there's a very real possibility he could be a top 15, top 20 level dynasty running back. So I still think even with that being unclear at this point, he is the favorite based on the prospect profile, based off the fit in the offense to be the 205 off the board. but the expectation shouldn't be, oh, he's going to be dominant from week one. The expectation should be, hey, maybe a Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne either get dealt or either get hurt by week 8, and then Tuten steps onto the scene, maybe plays, a 1B role and looks completely explosive to the point where by week 13, week 14, it's his job.
Yeah, he's a very soft 205 now. If the buzz was so positive around Tuten in mini camps and OTAs, and we were all feeling so excited that he could win this job outright, then this pick got a lot better. You know what I mean? Whereas now it's like you could definitely argue that Tuten shouldn't even be here anymore. He should be like the 207, 208, 209 or something like that. And a guy like Kyle Williams, who has a chance to profile as the early season number 2 receiver for Drake May, maybe even the long-term number 1, given Stephon Diggs' ACL tear, the fact that he's old and all that kind of stuff. So Tuten, we got to really value the training camp buzz because it didn't sound like he was, ready to be a lead back. And long term, we feel good about it because Etienne's a free agent, Bigsby's a free agent after next year. But Tuten definitely not the type of guy that if you drafted him, like if you drafted him 205, 206 in a lot of your drafts, like I did, you probably wanted to feel better about this 2-3 months down the road.
Yeah, and I could say honestly, we feel a little bit worse about everybody in this tier. Kyle Williams, we're hearing, some stuff where the Patriots are rolling receivers right now. He's not even in the first team. Obviously, I mean, Olabisi Johnson was listed ahead of Justin Jefferson. So we'll see really how much that matters come preseason time, come the start of the season. Because I do still think he's a clear top 2 wide receiver on this team. I'm just a little bit less excited on the week 1 to 4 impact than I was maybe in April and May. Same thing with Cam Scatterboo. We'll see how it plays out, but we do both favor Tracy. Trey Harris, I mean, he finally signed his contract. You mentioned earlier, Jayden Higgins, one of the first to sign his contracts. He was actually the reason why 30 out of 32 second-round picks didn't sign right away, because the Texans gave him a fully guaranteed rookie scale contract. So, of course, I mean, if you're a second-round pick, you see somebody get full guaranteed money, what is your agent going to do? Give me fully guaranteed money. Hey, guess what? I'm not signing this deal unless you give me a fully guaranteed deal. So 30 rookies in the second round we're waiting to sign. Regardless, Harris sounds like he's here. However, we've talked about it this offseason. We actually just straight up prefer Quinton Johnson over him in redraft this year. Quinton Johnson, I mean, apparently first day of training camp, already catches 2 touchdowns. Quinton Johnson, the same Quinton Johnson that was a top 36 wide receiver last year, scored, I believe, 10 touchdowns. So, and not to mention, it was just objectively a better prospect. I don't really understand why Best Ball opened with Trey Harris going above Quinton Johnson.
I think it's just the mystery box that Trey Harris is. And we talked about it from a player take standpoint that at Ole Miss, Trey Harris was not really asked to do a whole lot, that he's going to be asked to do a lot more in the NFL. It was a one read play action type of scheme, and he just ran faster than most of the people around him. And most of his production came against lower level colleges, and he was able to pad his stats, and then he got hurt before he started playing better teams at that point. So we thought the prospect profile might have been a little bit inflated by happenstance of playing those good matchups.
Play like Furman and
down.
shit.
Yeah, going down before you start playing the real schools to start to deflate your 5 point whatever yards per out run that you had at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. And Jack Bech, this is solely based off team stuff, because we both like the prospect. We both thought, hey, he's a Rams prototype, Cooper Kupp, Robert Wood, just tough guy. Get him in the middle of the field. He'll eat a few concussions for you if you has to. He's the ultimate, team receiver. Like, he will go in those gritty areas. With that being said, though, it sounds like they're preferring Jacoby Myers go in those areas instead.
Yeah. Bech, if he had better buzz, might be the top of this tier for sure. Any one of these guys, depending on the buzz, could be the top of this tier at this moment in time. We haven't changed it a ton from where we had it ranked in April, but it definitely could change over the next couple of weeks when you guys are watching this. Maybe you're watching this at the end of August or something.
That's our biggest advice, especially in this range. Like maybe 112 and above, 204 and above. It's like, talent wise, like there are differences. So you take the talented players. It's like these guys are so close in talent to the point where follow the buzz, follow the tea leaves, read into situations, because who knows, man? Like, obviously it's tough to say anybody here is going to be the next Puka Nacua, but it's like, if you followed the tea leaves of Puka Nacua in his offseason, you would have been a lot higher on him.
Yeah, whether it's not necessarily being like the person is like, oh, if we redrafted 2023, someone wouldn't have been stupid enough to rank Puka Nacua as like the 3rd overall player or whatever. But if you were much higher on Puka Nacua than he ended up going, then you would have ended up with a lot of Puka Nacua, which is pretty much ultimately all you can ask for. But we can move down to the next tier of players, and we'll try and rattle through these ones pretty quickly. The 2-3 turn, the biggest change I would say in my rankings ultimately has been moving the tight ends up. Terrance Ferguson and Mason Taylor were not in my second round, I believe, before, but they are in my second round now at my 211 or my 210 and my 211, because Terrance Ferguson getting a lot of buzz from Rams camp. They reportedly were going to take him in the first round. Tyler Higbee is not really a whole lot of competition, nor is Colby Parkinson. And Terrance Ferguson was an exceptional athlete, very good production profile, relatively speaking. And the Rams seem very high on him. And we know for years the Rams have been looking for a tight end that they've been able to use. They were apparently very high on Bowers last year. And we heard reports that they tried to get all the way up in the draft. So Ferguson is a guy that I've drafted a ton on Underdog. And I definitely, if I was doing my rookie drafts now, would have tried to get more shares than I already did.
If I'm not mistaken, weren't they also linked to like Kincaid and Laporta a couple years ago as well?
They were, yeah. They've been in on tight ends for a while. And same with Mason Taylor, too, has a chance to start for the Jets right away. No tight end competition outside of Jeremy Ruckert, like Tyler Conklin's in Los Angeles. And he has a chance to be the number 2 target in the passing game.
You know whose OC is, right?
His OC was in Detroit, who obviously had Sam Laporta have a great rookie year.
Who worked hand in hand with Laporta, because I believe he was the passing game coordinator, Tanner Ekstrom, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So these two guys, I mean, second round draft capital situations where they can start right away the Rams are a much better offense, obviously, than the Jets are, but there's also the number 3 for the Rams is probably what you're looking at behind Adams and Nakua versus the Jets. He can be the number 2 behind Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. No, exactly. If he does become the number 2 with Mason Taylor, with Terrance Ferguson, honestly, like they feel like very easy clicks at this point, because I've been drafting a ton of them on Underdog, and I feel like if they could be relevant in their rookie seasons, we probably should be drafting them on the 2-3 turn, because I mean, even Trey McBride wasn't relevant as a rookie. So just the fact that, I mean, like we don't even have to focus on Trey McBride because he was the freest grab after his rookie season I've ever seen. But we saw it with Sam Laporta. We've seen it with even Greg Dulcich, where it's like you show flashes as a rookie, people are willing to vault you up to the tight end 8 in Dynasty, the tight end 6 in Dynasty.
Yeah, and in full tight end premiums and stuff, you could definitely make the argument that these guys belong over the majority of the guys in the tier above. Like 2x tight end premium, like I would have a hard time taking, 4th round buy Shell Tuten over Terrance Ferguson, legitimately.
I would agree. Tyler Shough, realistically, the reason why he raised is we have more confirmation that he is slated to be the favorite for that starting quarterback job. We thought when he was drafted, top 40 capital. We liked Rattler better.
Derek Carr retired since then. That was the
that's a good
thing that happened.
That's a good. I wasn't sure if it happened before or after we were drafting.
No, I think he retired in like May, didn't he?
Let me double check now. Basically for me, I thought, Shough versus Rattler, like they were close enough from a talent perspective. Let me take a look when he retired.
May 16th is when he retired.
Okay. So yeah, literally after rookie drafts then.
When we made this video, April 27th, the first time we made this tier list video, right after the draft, we assumed Shough would have a chance to compete for a starting job in the long term, but we didn't know he was going to start potentially from week 1.
Yeah. And again, like at this point, maybe back then we thought, okay, 60-40, Shough's probably going to beat out Rattler 65-35. It's like, I'd almost put it at like an 80-20, 90-10 at this point. Like it sounds like Tyler Shough will get the first crack. And again, is he a quarterback that we think has the highest ceiling in the world? No, but we also saw Davis Mills being flipped for near first round capital. I don't expect the market to give up any type of capital like that for Shough because we've learned and we've grown sharper. But I could very easily see a possibility you can fetch a mid-2026 second for him because he started the first 6 games of the year.
Yeah, and for every non-first round quarterback that doesn't work out because they don't have the draft capital and they don't, hold the job down long term. You mentioned Davis Mills, Sam Howell, another good example of this. There is Brock Purdy, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, like guys that were not first round picks, Dak Prescott, who play their way into being starting quarterbacks that the team wants to build around. And while you and I were not high on Shough the prospect, there's ultimately a scenario where we could be wrong about that. And he ends up playing his way into a starting quarterback job long term.
Even after we saw Purdy play well in his rookie year, I still said, well, I mean, Trey Lance went early in the draft. Trey Lance didn't have the opportunity to start. Trey Lance, will get the first crack. It's like, if you impress the team and you have the good work ethic, even if you're not let's just say the most tangibly talented player, I think obviously Brock Purdy's a talented player, but I mean, you're talking about a guy that went from, the last pick in the draft. Like we weren't talking about him from a traits perspective. We've talked about how he's developed internally to become the quarterback that he's become.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I had Milroe a lot higher than this before. I think I had him in the tier with Tuten, with Kyle Williams and those guys, but we've heard pretty much nothing but positives for Sam Darnold, and also a lot of Milroe looks like he's not ready kind of stuff from the team. And
which was kind of expected.
It was kind of expected, and I'm still excited about a 2-3 turn pick like Milroe becoming a guy that becomes a really great lockdown dynasty asset, where if he starts games in the future, whether it's this year, next year, 2 years down the road, could end up really, really paying off the price tag that you spend for him. Like if you're you're able to get him doing rookie drafts right now, if you guys are listening to this, 212, 301, 302, something like that, he could end up very much 10xing his value basically by the time he's starting games for the Seahawks. It's just that the likelihood that that happens sooner rather than later has gone down since our first rendition of these rankings.
Yeah, and I'm more so not saying it in the capacity, hey, he's going to end up winning a Super Bowl. But I mean, the discussion we had with Jalen Hurts when he was a backup to Carson Wentz, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, he's going to eventually be a top 5 starter pick. But if you recall, like the year going in when Hurts was slated to potentially be the starter, he was like a 4th round startup pick, 5th round. People are like, okay, he's not very good, but he can run. It's like, because Jalen Hurts ended up like hitting to the degree that he did when you made that 4th or 5th round investment, if a similar case were to happen where even if Jalen Milroe from a long-term perspective didn't become Jalen Hurts, if he had that, I believe it was 2020 or 2021 Jalen Hurts type of year where it's like, it's pretty good, obviously work to do as a passer, but he's giving you rushing yards, like people will be drafting him in the 2nd round if Hurts was a 4th rounder or a 5th rounder.
Well, yeah. And what I said about Milroe,
look at Justin Fields.
Yeah, what I said before the draft about Milroe is that he's going to be somewhere between Malik Willis and Jalen Hurts. And the prospect model seems to think he's closer to Malik Willis than Jalen Hurts. But even Malik Willis right now has some value on the open market, thinking that after this year, he might be a free agent bridge quarterback type of deal or something like that. If he's closer to the middle of that, somewhere between Jalen Hurts and Malik Willis, then Jalen Milroe has a chance to really rise in value because as a runner, he is absolutely electric.
Hear me out. I actually quite like Malik Willis as a stash right now.
Oh, me too, dude. Exactly. That's why I'm saying if Milroe becomes 2 years down the road since we've had that draft, or 3 years down the road since we've had that draft with Malik Willis, if he has a better career trajectory than that, maybe by year 2 of the Seahawks deal with Sam Darnold, he gets hurt and Milroe shows us something at the end of his sophomore year, and then we're all excited about him as a dynasty asset. He is definitely the type of asset that you draft on rebuilds, not on teams that you're trying to win.
Yeah, exactly. He's actually a piece where if I'm trying to acquire him, it's not because I'm giving up a future 2 or future picks for that matter in general to acquire him. It's because I'm taking a Khalil Shakir off the team you're rebuilding. Like if you can give up, like, I wouldn't say older players, but not young players, like anybody that's 23, 24 and above, that isn't going to be a consequential producer for Jalen Milroe, and you're in a rebuilding situation, like I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. Like I said,
you might get a 3rd and Jalen Milroe for Darnell Mooney as well,
right? Like those type of Jacoby Myers types, like even Deebo Samuel, if you can get a plus on top, like that's what I'm talking. Where it's like if I don't view it as either a vet asset that will get me top 24 production or a young accruing value young player, and you're rebuilding, just cash in that cheap production that you don't need anyways for a Milroe.
Yeah, for sure. And Dylan Sampson's the next guy that we have here. Some people might argue that he should go up way higher because of the whole Judkins situation. He was still
talent-wise, he should.
Talent-wise, definitely he has a better chance to play games and, start games or whatever for the Browns than he did 3 months ago or whatever when we did this the first time. But he still is a 4th round pick. The buzz is that Jerome Ford would probably be the guy that gets the majority of the touches at least early in the season until Judkins gets his head screwed on straight or whatever the heck needs to happen until then. I would say if you drafted Dylan Sampson at the 212 back in April, you should feel better about him now than you felt about him at April 27th or whatever.
Well, I've always had him ranked on this 2-3 turn. For me, the way I look at it, I think the talent profile alone was worth it. I'm also at this point like expecting Judkins not to like for example, if Judkins is like, oh yeah, he's missing 6 games this year, Sampson would rise because I was higher on Sampson the prospect than you. Really what it comes down to is if Sampson was a Dallas Cowboy right now, if Sampson was a insert running back needy team here now instead of a Cleveland Brown, which again, I expect Judkins to be fine. They still have Jerome Ford. Even if you told me though that Judkins was out and Jerome Ford was his only backfield competition, I think it would only be an inevitable by week 2, week 3 that Sampson becomes a big time majority starter.
Yeah, and also like the guys in front of him are quarterbacks and tight ends. So if you're picking 210, you didn't need a quarterback or a tight end or whatever, and you wanted to take Sampson at that point, I think that's totally fine, which is why it's a tier here. Because like Ferguson, Taylor, Shough, Milroe, whatever, if you're like in somewhat of a need of those positions, that's why you would take the swing on those players.
Yeah, and not to mention he even like before the Judkins news, he was the freest handcuff on Underdog. Even after the Judkins news, I don't think he's risen enough.
Yeah, he's only gone up about 15 picks or so, I think.
Yeah, which, like, again, I would be willing to take this guy in, like, the 140s, the 150s, because I think he's that level of cuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then Pat Bryant's the other guy, big time riser since the first time we did this. We're also doing a top 36 versus a top 24 or 30, I think is what we did the first time. But Pat Bryant's gotten some nice buzz. He was a 3rd round pick from the Denver Broncos. And he also has a chance really to be like the number 2 target. If he can beat out Troy Franklin, Devon Vele, Marvin Mims, which all of those guys have warts to their games. Pat Bryant, like Vele, has size advantage over some of those other smaller guys. So, and we know Sean Payton absolutely loves size in his receivers. I didn't mind Pat Bryant's film too. Like when we watched the prospect, I was like, I got some skills. I compared him to Romeo Doubs. If you dropped Romeo Doubs on the Broncos right now, I think you would consider that an upgrade over their current number 2 wide receiver situation. So Pat Bryant definitely has to be on the rise. Not a guy that I was overly excited about selecting during April and May when I was doing my rookie drafts, but if I was doing a rookie draft now, definitely around that early 3rd round range, I'd be willing to take him.
Yeah, I agree with that. You mentioned, like for example, Devon Vele last year going to be looking like an example. Devon Vele had weeks where he had like 8 targets, 9 targets. Like if Pat Bryant becomes in that role as the number 2 wide receiver on this team, this is an offense that we still like with Denver. I mean, the Vegas implications alone are a lot higher than maybe we would have been coming into the year. Like I'm sure Vegas has them probably projected as like a top 10 level offense.
They're 13th or 14th, if I'm not mistaken, in implied point projection.
Yeah. So it goes to show you there. I think all these guys got upside, and I think they are distinguishable above the next tier, but I also still like these last tier guys as, late 3rd, early 4th round dart throws you want to have on your team.
Yeah, let's rattle through these as quick as possible. I'll rattle through the first 4 names, and then you want to rattle through the next 5 names, I guess it would be, and we'll just make quick cases for each guy. Because in the 3rd round, take the guys that you like. Realistically, this is the order that we have them ranked as a consensus, but if you like different guys, then it's no big deal. DJ Giddens, right now, day 1 handcuffed to Jonathan Taylor. Long term, Jonathan Taylor's 27 years old, has a lot of touches under his belt. Maybe by year 2, year 3, DJ Giddens takes the career path of, like, let's say Tajay Spears, where in year 3 with Tajay Spears, we're thinking, hey, maybe he can actually win this backfield out this year. Whereas year 1 and year 2, he had Derrick Henry in front of him and then had Tony Pollard, who had the big contract in front of him last year. DJ Giddens, good stash for rebuilders. Oronde Gadsden, getting some buzz in training camp with the Chargers right now. Both of us liked him as like, hey, if you squint top 95th percentile range of outcome, we could actually see this guy turn into Darren Waller. It would be really shocking if he did, but it is possible given the receiver background, the fact that he has a lot of experience catching passes and a great profile to boot. Oronde Gadsden definitely be on your radar. Could start for the Chargers as soon as midway through his rookie season. Elikai Manor, a lot of good buzz in OTAs and mini camps. Wide open wide receiver core with Cam Ward, the first overall pick. If he ends up being great, Calvin Ridley's a little bit older and there's nobody behind him. So that's the case for Io Manor as like a big slot or a power forward type receiver. And then Harold Fannin, who was the number 1 prospect in the tight end prospect model, even despite going in the 3rd round. Right now, there's a lot of muddy stuff around the Browns, but a year from now, it could clear up because David Njoku is there and he's a great player, but he is a little bit older, has dealt with injuries. Maybe the Browns would get a little bit fed up with him, and we don't know who's going to start for the Browns long term. That problem could be solved by next year's draft as well. Harold Fannin, great rebuilding target for tight ends as well. If you're looking to just, okay, I'm tearing it down, I have a bunch of picks, 305, yeah, I'll take Harold Fannin. Maybe he could be a long-term tight end option for me.
Yeah, and a guy that I actually have now since raised above Fannin, Elijah Arroyo. Obviously, the news, Noah Fant, he is no longer a Seattle Seahawk. We've all heard at this point, I believe, Mike McDonald and I believe John Schneider, if I'm not mistaken, at the podium talking about, oh, well, if Elijah Arroyo didn't get hurt, he would have been a top 15 pick. He can even play outside wide receiver if we need him to in a pinch. It's like, do I believe based on the prospect evaluation that Arroyo's capable of playing outside wide receiver? No. Do I think he is even a top 3 to 5 level talent at the tight end position in this class? No. But when you look at the draft capital, you look at the opportunity ahead of him. I like AJ Barner, but if the team's already talking about Elijah Arroyo like this, he's at least worth a stab in the 3rd round of your rookie drafts. Because if he does get the opportunity to play starting tight end, maybe from week 1, week 2 on, again, I thought he was a raw prospect, but that opportunity alone is going to create a sell window. And you could probably get at least a 2nd round pick straight up if he is the starting tight end for the Seahawks on day 1.
Yeah, and I didn't like the prospect profile at all, especially in the model, but he also didn't test. And had he tested, he might have raised his prospect model grade because I think he would have tested well had he tested. And he didn't. So that's a part of his prospect profile that's missing. And if he had, run a 4.59 or something like that, he probably has a much better prospect model grade.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of the other guys here, Jalen Noel, a little bit of a logjam receiver for the Texans. We know Nico Collins is a stud. We just talked about Jayden Higgins. They bring in Christian Kirk this offseason. Christian Kirk versus Jalen Noel, I view as kind of like the handcuff, if you will. Like if Christian Kirk were to get banged up, Noel is probably the identical replacement. But I just have a hard time seeing Noel get on the field regardless of an injury. Like, I don't think he's going to straight up beat out Christian Kirk in year one, which is why he is more so as a stash play, because I think the talent is there. I thought he was a good prospect. He obviously goes to their ground, but I just don't see the immediate appeal for potential target share there for Jalen Noel. Devin Neal, Kendra Miller sounds like I get it was the previous regime, but if Kendrick Miller was going to do something by now, he probably would have, given that, Alvin Kamara is aging, Alvin Kamara is declining in efficiency. Like if Kendrick Miller was a good number 2 for Kamara, he would have garnered more work than he has in these last couple of years. For the most part, I just think the team was unimpressed with Kendrick Miller. They bring in Devin Neal. Does Devin Neal have a top 5 overall running back ceiling if Kamara got hurt? Probably not, but is Devin Neal, a fundamental Devin Singletary type of running back where he does kind of everything well, he can figure into a committee? That's kind of what I see from Devin Neal at this point. Jarquez Hunter, very similar in the sense that I think it's going to be a committee approach. I think it's going to be Kyron as the one with Hunter as the 2 and Corum as the main handcuff to a guy like Kyron Williams. But everything we've heard from the Rams this offseason has pointed to they were targeting for a Hunter type of back. They saw what you guys did last year from a versatility perspective, having an inside runner, having a guy that can play those outside plays. We know Jarquez Hunter, yeah, sure, maybe he is not the best between the tackles carrier, but if you give that guy space, he's explosive, he's nifty in the open field, he can create big chunk plays, and that is what the Rams were looking for in offense, because Kyron simply was unable to do it, and I don't think Blake Corum was giving you much in terms of explosion either. And then Taj Brooks, kind of like the Kyron of the scenario, where it's like Chase Brown, obviously explosive. Chase Brown, everything we've heard, is going to profile into a 3-down workload, and we've already heard the Bengals OC talking about, like, we expect Chase Brown to be a big pillar in our offense going into 2025. But I think Zach Moss is dust. Zach Moss literally sounded like he was going to retire after last season. Zach Moss literally, broke his neck, if I'm not mistaken. Big time neck injury. Got his contract slashed by over a half. To me, you draft Taj Brooks for insurance on Chase Brown because you do not trust Zach Moss to be able to be the number 2 running back on your team.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think you kind of summed up all the players there. Good. I'm not really willing to add anything. The only thing I would say is that if this was just my rankings and not both of our rankings, I would have Jalen Noel a little bit higher, just because I do think it's kind of expected that he's going to work behind Christian Kirk in year one, and he'll probably be a long-term number 2. And he was also an 84th percentile separator per Matt Harmon against man coverage. So
how's he going to be number 2 though?
What's up?
How's he going to be the number 2 though?
He's probably not going to be the number 2. We don't know if Higgins for sure is better than him. I guess you do have pretty good example because they played in college together and they're going to play in the NFL together. But from a PPR target share perspective, it's possible that, maybe he's the more valuable fantasy receiver. That was the only guy that I kind of disagreed with, but pretty much everything else, these are the 3rd rounders. I mean, take the guys that you like. If you like Io Manor more than us, take him higher. If you like Brooks more than us, go ahead, take him higher. But yeah, that is the end of the video. We went through our top 36 tier listed Dynasty rookie rankings, updated as of July 22nd, 2025. If you guys are watching this a few weeks from now, obviously we are doing this with the information that we have. And of course, you can get our updated rookie rankings, updated Dynasty rankings, updated 1 quarterback, Superflex, whatever you guys are looking for. And if you guys want to go back and read some of the draft guide stuff that we talked about, the prospect profiles, the film related notes that we said on these players when they were coming out, you can go ahead and read that over on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE to get started. Our draft guide is up there, the 2025 Wall Street Journal, and all of our updated rankings are there as well. So if you guys are interested in that, check it out. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.